All right. Well, this is another episode of Off the Record Show. Different though. I'm a guest host here, Sergey Ross. I'm helping Aram and Crowdlinker team on the content side, and I'm doing an interview with one and only the CEO of Crowdlinker, Aram Melkoumov. Aram, great to have you. Finally.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. Thanks for having me.
No, it's so funny when we actually doing this interview and you are actually the host of all the episodes before. Just interesting how the whole dynamic actually changes.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what to expect, so I'm gonna do my best here as the participant, not the host this time.
So we're gonna start with some heavy things because I mean I can tend to like those. So
You go
you
deep right into it, huh?
exactly. We're not sparing any time. So you almost went out of business after pandemic hit. You've been, I know that's what I said. You as a Crowdlinker, like you basically were growing the company for multiple years, for 5+, 6+ years, and then pandemic came in and you kind of almost lost most or a lot of paying clients. What was going
Yeah.
through your mind at that time when you realized like we are in this really very difficult position?
Yeah. That's I haven't talked about this publicly yet. I mean, only internally within the team, but there's a bit of a context leading up to what happened to get to that point. So uh, I was approached at the end of 2019, and then I spent the next 3 months working through potential acquisition of the company. The buyer was interested in our capabilities as a product team for his R&D initiatives, and it was a publicly traded company that was in the ride sharing space. And I thought, okay, cool. Like it's been 8 years. Let's do an exit. I'm ready for it. And little did I know how much time it would take to go through the whole process. And I kind of lost perspective a little bit in terms of the more important things they should have been focusing on. And so when the deal kind of fell apart, just when the pandemic was starting to pick up, I had basically. I lost my attention to my sales pipeline. I was too focused on this deal, and when that deal fell apart, I was kind of like stuck. I didn't know what to do because we had a pretty large team at that time, and we didn't have a pipeline. And then when the pandemic started, scaring off a lot of our own clients in terms of like pausing budgets, canceling projects, or pushing them out later into the year, I think lost 75% of our ongoing work at the time. And I started to panic. I was, borderline depressed
Can imagine.
because, I had to make some really tough decisions and we had to do it. And we did temporary layoffs across the entire team. And I kept some of the team members who we still had some smaller work for as contractors. And for about a month, my business partners and I were actually looking at different kind of insolvency approaches, speaking to bankruptcy lawyers, and we're trying to figure out, personally and business-wise, like, what do we do? What are our options, right? Because we had a lot of debt that was kind of picking up at that point, and we had to consider all options at that time. And yeah, it was a really sad time. It was probably like the lowest point of my life, to be honest. And I didn't think we would get out of it, but the team actually gave me the encouragement that I needed because they're like, we're here, we're sticking around. Let's figure this out, and that gave me the motivation to actually get up every day. And I spent then, I think, April, May rebuilding a pipeline, refocusing our sales efforts on businesses that were thriving in the whole situation with what the pandemic was causing. Because there are industries that were booming during this unfortunate crisis, and we rebuilt a pipeline. We rehired, I think, about half the team back on payroll, and we've been steadily building things up again, and we have runway again, and we've paid off all the debts, and we're actually set up for having a really good quarter this year. So it all happened, it feels like an eternity during that whole process. But it was a lesson learned for me. I mean, the main thing for me was that I learned never take your eye off the prize. And the prize should be having always a pipe in your business, having a good cash flow forecast planned out, and not putting all your eggs into one basket. And we were too focused on a lot of our billable work, and we weren't diversified enough at that time. And I probably learned more in those very difficult couple of months than I think I did in like the last long while. So yeah, it was painful.
It's interesting how Ben Horowitz actually describes it, or at least I've heard that when he did, like, he talked to a lot of CEOs, wrote the book, and he said that a lot of CEOs, the way that they describe their work, they basically takeaways from their journey is that the moment of pride for them is that they didn't quit. That's really their, like, that's what they do, versus other folks who are a little bit kind of more mediocre type of CEOs. They're like, oh, I did this, I did that. They're put in numbers, versus like other CEOs, they're like, hey, I was here, didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. Oh man, I have so much to say about that. If you look at a CEO, they have borderline, very different psychological traits as a person than than the regular human, I think, in my opinion. And if you look at people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, a lot of, like, there's thousands of really successful entrepreneurs, and they're the ones who never gave up. They're the ones who, against all odds, they stood out and they were resilient to whatever was thrown at them. And despite all their challenges, they got up every day. And this is my thing that I say to myself. I'm like, I have a lot of shitty days. And I say to myself, tomorrow, I know the sun's going to get up and it's going to be a new day. Whatever happened today, it will be gone tomorrow. And I'll still have those problems, but I'll have the opportunity to, like, figure them out. And the moment the sun doesn't get up the next day, then we're all fucked anyway. You know what I mean? So it doesn't really matter at that point. But I think to be an entrepreneur, you got to be a bit crazy. You got to be outside the norm of, at times, like, reality in terms of what can be done, and what not. And you got to be resilient. Like, you got to be really, really, really resilient towards anything. So it's a tough job, and it's definitely not for everybody. I know a lot of entrepreneurs who want to I know a lot of people, who want to get into the entrepreneurship space, and I try to understand why they do it. And a lot of people who say, "Oh, it's for money. I'm going to run my own business, and I'm going to make a lot of money, and I'll be in control of my own life, and whatever." There's actually, like, a very different perspective across that. It's that when you are the CEO of your own company, you have to please everybody. It's not all you. You have to please your clients. You have to please your shareholders. You got to please your team members, your employees. You have to be constantly juggling everybody's wants and needs and desires. And you got to put those always in front of your own. And it comes with a lot of sacrifices, things that you probably don't want to do at times. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to put your pride and your ego aside. And you really got to figure out how you're going to solve whatever challenge is thrown at you. And a lot of the people who I speak to, they don't understand what that really is. And they don't understand the amount of effort personally or professionally you have to kind of go through, the sacrifice you have to make with your family. Like I have, my wife's incredible in terms of supporting me over these last 10 years I've been an entrepreneur. And I have 3 kids, and she understands that, I have late nights. I might not be there, and I'm doing my best. That's kind of what I always say, when she's asking me like where I am or what am I doing. I'm like, I'm only just trying to make something work at the end of the day, and keep my team employed, make a change, push the boundaries in terms of what we can always do, and what I want to do as an entrepreneur. And I think, at the end of the day, we are all kind of like a speck in this whole universe. And whatever legacy I can leave behind, small, big, whatever it is, that's kind of like the only thing that I kind of look forward to. Is like, what can I do? What can I change? What micro, macro factors can I change to make it for the better? Make it, make people's lives better with great product software that impacts them on a daily basis, or tons of other things.
What point of difference, Aram, keeps you in the game? Or you can call it superpower, you can call it a thing, as if you were to pick, if you were to say that's the thing, and maybe it's going to be to disappointment or to delight to the listeners. What would that be? Or what would you put it down to?
For me personally, it's knowing that I have a family around me, like my wife, my kids. That keeps me going. It's kind of like a weird thing, but when I'm alone, when they're away, or they're on vacation, I'm here working. Like I'm not as effective. It's a weird kind of thing, but I don't sleep as well. I have a lot more stress. Funny enough, when I know that I'm at home with my kids and everybody, I actually feel more empowered, more encouraged. I have a purpose, in some shape or form. That's what also motivates me, aside from the fact that I have a really awesome supportive team that is there for me and helping me whenever we have like some obstacle in our way. And they're the other kind of half of my kind of like spectrum of my superpower is family and my team. My family, my team is in many ways my family. Like we spend more time together than I do with my own family. And it's and they understand that, they appreciate it, and I think it's mutual, right? And when we all have one unified purpose, one unified goal, it's amazing what we could do towards hitting that goalpost of ours. And so that's what excites me. Is I'm just one person, but when I'm working with a lot of my peers and my team members, what we do together is what excites me.
It's amazing how the perception works. It's like people look at you from the outside. There's all this facts, success, all this on paper looks incredible, and it always reminds me of that Peter Thiel a little story when he said he wanted to get into this accounting. I think it was an accounting or legal company in New York, and he said on the outside everybody wanted to get in, on the inside everybody wanted to get out. It's really like the price that you have to pay, and people just don't know the real price. Maybe they should hang out with the CEO a little bit more as in a certain capacity, and just to see what it is.
Yeah, it's nothing is really what it ever seems. I don't know. I got countless stories of client engagements or other large organizations that we've come across, not as clients directly, that I've interfaced with, and it's surprising how unorganized or how unstructured a lot of companies are run. And I'm not saying we're perfect by no means whatsoever, but you think that at large companies that are like brand names. You think they have it figured out and that they have an amazing structure or process or a way to do talent retention or whatnot. But um, everything is always surface level until you get in there. You realize that, it's not as peachy as one would think. Um, so yeah, it's never really what it seems like anywhere, right? It's this.
Well, I'm just gonna. I know it's probably gonna sound biased to all the folks, but I will say Crowdlinker is the most structured company I've ever worked for, by far. In every way that you operate in as the team, it's extraordinarily structured, and amount of detail, attention to detail is something I've never seen before. I worked at other startups that are fast, that have a great team, but the attention to detail with your team is pretty exceptional. And for me, what it shows me, it's really that culture that comes from you, because I've seen how you work. I watched. I like to observe the behavior. So whenever you open the Google Doc, the first thing most of the time you would do, you would go and correct a spelling error or a typo.
Yeah, people. I don't know. People mention that to me so many times that I could be very specific or attention detail oriented towards certain things. Or this is another example. Like in our office, I'm pretty technical. I know networking and a lot of IT stuff, and I would spend lots of my time like organizing the network, making sure that we have a good speed, cleaning up and organizing people's desks. Like I'm known for being crazy like that. But my thinking is that if you care and you love what you do and you have the passion towards what it is that you are working on, if you make it nice and structured and pretty and clean and organized and something that you want to work in or work within, it gives me a bit of peace of mind as like a person. Maybe it's just me, I'm crazy. But it helps me like know that, okay, like I have a standard, and I know that when people get to our office or get to their desk and things are kind of ready and organized, all the wires are cleaned and pretty. So I'm a bit meticulous, that kind of stuff, but I think it carries through towards everything that I do. That I try to put love into what I do, and I think it works. Caring about what you do, I think if you don't care, then what's the point at the end of the day?
Right.
What are you doing and why are you doing it then? So yeah.
I want to talk about some of the client work, because you have a lot of examples of that. A lot of times, and I've heard it not only from you, I've heard it from a lot of other folks, it's off-putting when clients treat you like shit. And that's an unfortunate thing, where these companies that have big brands on the outside, they're not anywhere near as great on the inside. They hire a company that actually is really, really smart in what they do, because you do that. You do product development, you do website development, and then there's all the relationship or the way that they look at you. Why does that happen? How do you find that dynamics evolving? And let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's a sore spot. Over the years, it took us a long time to build a reputation and a brand around what we do, right? Like we used to be a startup building our own SaaS products, and when we went into the professional service side of the industry and started building product for other people, initially, like we had lower rates, hourly rates. And when people see what your rate is, they tend to think, okay, you're probably low quality or low cost or not high performing. But I had to start somewhere in terms of building a portfolio. So we started off, I think, at like a 75 or 60. Well, I can't remember. I think we started off at $60 an hour. And then quickly did we realize that, hey, that doesn't actually work. We can't actually make a business that way. But then we grew, we evolved, and over time we started attracting different types of clients, all sizes, startups, scale-ups to like Fortune 500 companies. It's funny, the Fortune 500 companies that we work with are the ones that always treated us not the best. And for them, and I think the general paradigm is when you hire somebody and you pay them money, you think that you kind of, it's not like you own them, but it's like, hey, I'm paying you a service. Like I tell you what to do. And the challenge with that type of mentality is that, like, okay, cool. Like let's end. Okay, you're paying me. I'm doing a service for you, and you're like, okay, it's my money I'm giving you, so I'm telling you what to do. But then it's like, I'm the expert. I know what we're doing. Why don't you then listen to what I'm trying to tell you, so that you could, build a better business or build a better marketing website or whatever. And instead of micromanaging me, just like, let's not focus on that, and like, let's focus on more important things. And it's all based on the person, like the people that we work with come from all walks of life, have bad experiences, good experiences, and unfortunately, like the reality is in the agency world, there's been a lot of bad juju that kind of happened in the industries. Like lots of companies hired big professional service providers, and they thought that, hey, I have the best, I'm going to work with the best, and I'm going to get the best. And over time, that dynamic doesn't exist. There's that whole perspective of like, the A team comes and pitches me for the sale, but then the B or C level team comes and does the work. People that I've never met and that I've never got introduced to, and they're somewhere in the back office, not speaking to me, not interacting with me, and they don't give a shit about what they're doing. And that's the fundamental problem with some of like the older school kind of agencies that created basically a bad rep, bad street cred. And so it's very hard going upstream when you're facing all this pressure of like this negativity towards agencies, because people got burnt, people got ruined, they lost their jobs because of some bad experience, and then everybody thinks it's the same everywhere with everybody else in the industry, and that's the frustrating part for me. It's hard sometimes also aligning mindsets with the people that you want to work with, because you have to make sure that the way that they see things or the way they work, their belief or their values is similar to yours. And it requires a level of trust, and it's a partnership at the end of the day. The best clients that we've ever worked with were the ones who were like, you guys know what you're doing. Here's my problem. Here's my objective and my plan for, my company. Here, that's it, right? And please figure it out how to solve this problem. And that empowers us and the team members individually to feel like, hey, I have the ability to go and do something, and I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to be appreciated for it. At the end of the day, all anybody wants is to have appreciation for the work they do, the independence, the autonomy to be able to work, within certain, boundaries, but, have that ability to see things for what they are and to do what their professional guidance is telling them, instead of constantly being micromanaged by somebody in terms of like, hey, that button, it's blue, but I think it's too blue. Let's make it lighter, or let's make it green. Like, who gives a shit about the color of that button? Focus about what the customer is going to do, whether the customer is going to use the product, pay for the product. And I can't say how many times we've been in situations where I tried to advise the CEOs that we work with that to get out of their innovator's dilemma and, get out of that mindset that what you think is the only solution or what you think is best, even though you are the subject matter expert and you might know what you're doing. But at the end of the day, it's what the market says. It's what the customer says. It's what the customer says by giving you their hard-earned money. And there's been so many products that have started off and failed, not just with us, but I know hundreds of horror stories. And it just all comes down back to alignment in terms of having the ability to go and properly vet the idea and do the validation of it, iterate quickly, cheaply, right? It's not very expensive to go and test out different ideas or concepts in the market these days. There's so many tools out there. But trying to get through to the client to explain that when they're so set in their ways is super challenging. And we've canceled projects, or we have ended relationships with certain individuals in the past because they just weren't listening to us. And you know, I didn't want to take, I wasn't comfortable anymore, and my team wasn't comfortable anymore working with them and taking their money because we're not building something that is going to work, right? And it wasn't done correctly. So it's a frustrating thing.
What do you put it down to? What's the difference between, and it does come a lot to down to the relationship and the trust that you have. If the person hires you, they have the trust, they know that you are the type of folks that know what you do, and Crowdlinker does, then it's a lot easier. But what it comes down to with one client that trusts you and the other one that is not, is this existing relationship? Is this the personality? Is this just the length of time they know you, or it's just too hard to put it down to one thing?
It's a combination of all those. Like, I think personality plays a big way. There's a lot of people in high power titles at different organizations where they have the authority. Their team, unfortunately, fears them in some shape or form, and they never get it straight from anybody because, you know, nobody gives it to them straight. And so then they're kind of like walking in the clouds, and they're just like big believers in drinking their own Kool-Aid, and are against anything or anybody saying anything worth mentioning to them about like what they need to do. In terms of trust and relationship, what we've seen is that 90% of all of our work comes from referrals. Very, very seldomly did we ever get like a project that came in through a pure cold approach. And when it did happen, the way that we were able to secure those clients was because they saw that we have a good portfolio list of equal like organizations that we worked with. And everybody in, say, Toronto startup ecosystem knows each other. So there's a lot of other agencies that have looked at a lot of the engagements which they do as transactional. They go, they wow them, they have all these awards, you know, that is very surface level, whereas behind the scenes there's like a lot of just crap. And you know, they put this out there saying, hey, you know, we have all these awards, I'm the best, we're the best. And I know, you know, a few of them where a lot of their projects were just one time. And those, unfortunately, is an example of those type of companies that ruin it for the rest of us because of how they treat their customers. And it's not transactional, it's relationship, because you got to think of it in a way that even though you're working with somebody and you're building something that is going to be public, it's the way what I'm trying to say is that the way that we look at it is we want to sit on the same side of the table as our client partners do. When we invest and we put our name in front of anything which we do with them, it just has as much like potential success or failure as it is for them. So we have a lot of repeat business coming back, and people refer us because they're like, hey, these guys are, you know, they're good, they know what they're doing, they care as much, if not more, than we do, right? So when we are living and breathing their problems every day is what I think sets us apart because we just give a shit more than they do sometimes, right?
But it's a
And
challenge to communicate to the clients where this is an agency and agencies do have a bad rep. But how do you actually tell them in plain English so they believe that your work doesn't get outsourced to the C level folks and you're going to get a certain level of standard of work? It's hard.
mhm. Yeah, it's hard. And I think the way that we've done that is I bring everybody who's going to be working on the project front and center into the very first call or the second call. But in the whole sales process, the team that's going to be potentially working on it from like an allocation perspective is in those calls. They're listening, they're speaking to the customers. And what that helps us bridge is that gap. Because when my developer or my designer is speaking to the client directly in a sales call, before we even have a proposal or a contract out with them, is they're listening. There's no, broken telephone. It's direct. They see the pain that they're going through, and through video these days, like we could capture, I think, enough to kind of feel how they're doing, right? Like what's their challenge, and empathize with them. Because at the end of the day, if we can't empathize with them, then we can never really connect to them, at some level. And then if we can't connect to them, then we can't build something that's going to help them. Because we need to feel and share their kind of pain or what they're trying to do to create something together. And I think that's what works, or that's what's been working for us.
Is there a story where the relationship didn't go well, either off from the start, or you actually ended up having to cancel the project that you'd be comfortable sharing without mentioning the names or logos? Anything where the fact that sometimes, unfortunately, the agencies do get treated like shit. Is there anything
Yeah.
that you could, anything that you think
So
could?
there was there was a project that we worked on, and they've rebranded now, their company. And even going into the meetings, a preliminary meeting, sales meetings with them, I kind of like was like, I don't know, like I really don't think they're the right client for us, because they're saying one thing, I'm saying another thing, and they're not hearing me. But at that time, it was like the concept was interesting, and it wasn't really done before. And it was two co-founders, and nobody really had the ability also to say, this is what we're doing. There was no, like, sometimes in a startup, like, it depends on the relationship you have. Like, I know we've interviewed like some people who have like three co-founders and they make it work, right? With
Good for them.
with Lucas from talent.com, and it works, right, for some people. But for some people, it just comes off as like you can't get aligned. You're speaking two different dialects to each other. You aren't even aligned, right, with each other. And we liked the idea, so we're like, okay, let's start. Let's try to do it. And it was an MVP that we were building for them. And then throughout the whole process, like, everything kept changing, and that's okay. It's okay that an idea, a concept, a product, a design, everything can change, especially we're working in an agile manner. Um, but what wasn't working was their dynamic. That killed it for us, because we're we're constantly doing something, and they say one thing, another one says another thing. We incorporate everything, and it just never worked. And and there was a time where, like, they tried to kind of like level with us, and like, we tried to have like an open conversation to just get everything off everybody's chest, and it worked. But then, like, the next day came, and like it was like a reset button, and nothing really changed. And they wanted to keep working with us, but as I said, as a CEO, you got to be constantly feeling and empathizing with everybody, right? So you got to be like the sponge, and you got to feel what the client's feeling. You got to feel what the team's feeling. And the moment the team stops losing interest, like it's game over, right? Like they're not going to keep working on it, or they're not going to give two craps about it anymore, because they're like, why am I doing this if they don't appreciate what I'm doing? Um, and so unfortunately we just said, hey guys, like this is not working. We recommend, we'll do the handover, we'll transfer everything over to you. We're not going to continue with the next phase, and we parted ways with a decent budget, I think, going forward too. But it was, the cost and the benefit just didn't make sense. It just came to a point where like, okay, like I'd rather find something else, or put the team into something where they're more appreciated or valued in terms of their insight. And it's happened, over time, in different ways. And each story is never the same. It's a very different path to get to each end state, I find. The other thing that's sometimes frustrating for me is nobody gives it straight. It's all kind of wishy-washy sometimes. They're saying something, but then in their head they're thinking something else. And I just wish people would just be, and this is like, might sound weird, but like, when we work with people in the US, like with our US clients, it's so refreshing because it's
They
like
give it to you
blunt.
straight.
They just give it to you straight. I'm not going to work with you. Great. I'm going to move on now to the next person.
I love
Or
that
I'm
shit.
not happy with this, Aram.
Yeah.
I don't like this and this and this. Perfect. Let me go work on this. Right. But then in other times, like, it's not just Canadians, but even like, in other cultures, they just like don't want to rock the boat. And then we're basically just like twirling our thumbs, going around in circles. Instead of, we could have just gotten straight to the point in terms of what the problem is. And it's sometimes very hard to get to that point, because it requires prying stuff out of people. And if people are introverted, or whatever, they just not might be comfortable sharing that, or giving somebody some bad news, which is then a personality thing, right? Because
Yeah.
I want to work with people who are at the same kind of mindset as we are, and like a level state, like a mind state where they can be fair, but firm, but always give it to us straight. Don't curveball. Just go in for the kill. When you see it, call it out. It keeps us thinking, oh shit, we need to be always on our tippy toes, so to speak. But instead of like sucking energy out of us over months, it could have been handled. It could have been just like, brought out in like a day, in a phone call, so yeah.
I remember I was hired once by an American woman, and it was an amazing experience. It was such an incredible interview. Like, oh, so you did this? You know a little bit about it? Great, you're hired. It was fantastic, and I so much appreciated the level of. I think it really comes down to the mentality
Tendency.
piece.
Yeah.
Yes, it's also like they give it to you direct, like, and they give you an ability. They give you a chance, because I found with Canadian folks, and it's in many ways is how their companies do operate, or companies operate, Canadian ones, is that they are so risk averse. They quadruple check everything, and it just kills the whole dynamic.
100%. It's a like it's a very conservative, risk aversion mindset, um, and it's hard to change. Like you can't change people, maybe over time, but if it's like a 3-6 month engagement, like, why waste your energy trying to change people's philosophy or mindsets fundamentally? Like, you just rather put the effort towards finding clients who are on the same wavelength as you, instead of trying to change people. You're just wasting your time and their time and money and energy.
Do you have a favorite failure that could be client failure, your personal failure, maybe by favorite, that could be a funny aspect to it, or pretty much anyone that you think could fit the bill.
Aspect to it.
Yeah, it's a pretty broad question, but you could go either way, personal or client.
So when we were growing and scaling out our team, I needed to bring on some more leadership talent into the organization, because we were always everybody was kind of equal, and when I needed to bring in some key position spots to be filled, I didn't really know how to do. I didn't really know how to go about it, and for me, I was inexperienced at that time, and I fundamentally made the wrong hires in certain occasions. When I reflect on that, it created some toxicity. It created it just led to sometimes poor morale, and I should have nipped it in the butt a lot quicker. And I know some of our own clients went through some stuff similar, and a lot of great people left. And as like an individual, like you can't know everything, right? So I made some mistakes. I brought on at times kind of the wrong people, and I should have action on that, I think, earlier on, in order to I don't know, not reset, I'm trying to find the word, but just trying to, like, I needed to make those decisions faster in order to bring things back on track, essentially.
Just keep going forward.
Yeah, to just keep go. Yeah, and they were, truthfully, I'm not. A lot of people think that CEOs pull in the most amount in terms of salary and things like that, and I've never been the most high. I've never been the high salaried person on the team, and I don't really care about that. The reason why I bring it up is because everybody in their professional life has different needs and wants in terms of, like, what they want to use with their money and things like that. So I've never really cared. I have, like, the salary that I have right now is sufficient for me. I don't, there's like that kind of, like, what is it? I think 75K has been proven to be the salary that's
yes.
enough, right?
Right.
I remember reading that somewhere. And it's true. Like, Gary Vaynerchuk, I was just watching something where he said that, he knows lots of people who are getting paid, 150,000 and then got paid 200,000, and their lives became miserable. So, so I think I know what my balance is, and other people have obviously different things that they want in their life. Some people are driven by money and titles and different things. But kind of going back to your question, I was a bit immature at the time, and I didn't know how to handle the conflicts internally when they were rising up quick enough. And that, I think, led to a failure of me in terms of the eyes of my team, in terms of poor leadership. And I always say, everybody, I don't have all the answers, guys. Like, I'm just somebody pointing in, like, one direction, and I think that's the way to go. And I know there's a Star Trek analogy here, where I think there was something I read that he landed on one planet and he pointed in terms of one direction. It's like, okay, we're gonna go that way, and everybody's like, why? He's like, I don't know, but I think that's just, like, let's try, right? And people in our team, in any organization, have to all understand that, hey, we're all human. We all make mistakes. We all can fall flat on our face and fail. But I think what sets a good leader in some ways is admitting to their mistakes, realizing that they had it, or that they just went through it, and then figuring out how they're going to avoid it next time. And if you're always honest with your team in terms of, hey guys, I really failed, it humanizes you a bit on many levels. It makes them realize, hey, Aram can make mistakes just as I can. He's not perfect, right? So, I mean, I have countless things. I mean, with my, previous co-founder, co-CEO that I had, it was tricky at that time, and like I have so many examples, but you learn over time how to be better at your craft, and the only way to do that is by living through it. There's no book, podcast, ebook,
DVD.
MBA, yeah, this world that would ever replace practical experience, by a long shot. I did my degree in entrepreneurship, my bachelor of commerce with a major in entrepreneurship, and a lot of theory. We did some practical stuff towards the end, but right away after graduating, I did my first business. It was an e-commerce startup. I learned more in those 3 years than I did in like my whole like education life. So what I would recommend to anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur, go do it. Just go try. You could always go back to where you are, right? Nothing's going to change. Like you'd be surprised. Like you could go try something, and probably most likely all the people that, were there when you left are probably still going to be there, because it takes a very different mindset to go and try something, to go out of your way, to go and learn, to go and fail. And it just makes you so much better, so much more of like a well-rounded generalist, I think, at the end of the day.
I noticed one thing that was really profound just very recently is ability or awareness of not taking big leaps. Because people, when they think about entrepreneurship, they're like, oh my God, I have to quit everything. I have to divorce my wife, and I have to go and jump from the airplane. You don't have to do that. In fact, that's probably a bad idea. You don't quit anything. You just write a line of code, one line of code a day.
Yeah.
And now you're starting on a journey that triggers a sequence of events that allows you to learn something and go further. But like, it's interesting because people kind of put this big step as the way to self-block themselves, which is really fascinating.
I think people set their own roadblocks themselves, fundamentally. I think as humans, we are afraid of change. We are afraid of risk. And I think what it takes to do those type of things that you're saying is just commitment and being a bit fearless, right? Like you said it, right? A lot of people think entrepreneurship is like you got to jump into with 2 feet. No, you could keep your job that's paying you and supporting your family, and at the same time, spend an hour every day. You'd be surprised what an hour every day, 5-6 days a week can do. Go through it slowly. Get to the point where you're starting to maybe make some income. Don't quit your job yet. Keep doing it until like you really start to hit the nail on the head and you see real opportunity there that you could actually maybe consider quitting your job. One of the things that I like when I went to the Founder Institute program, which is like a pre-accelerator for startups, is they make you sign a resignation letter from wherever you're working, and they make you, I think, sign it like pretty early on in the program, and they make you sit on it until you get to the point where you're in your business or you're through the program, or when you need to trigger it in order to move on from your whatever you're doing, it's ready, it's there, right, for you. And it when I did mine, it was kind of hard writing your own kind of resignation letter, or but it's that idea, it's that mindset, right? Like also what I want to say is that don't think that whatever you have is everlasting. There's things change, markets change. Look at the pandemic. Nobody expected it. You look at the companies that were set; they had everything, great revenue, great business model, and then this came, and people got totally, they were in their career, they were in their jobs, and they loved it, and then boom, there were layoffs in tons of industries. And then the unfortunate thing is that those people, it came up too abruptly for them, and they never had the knowledge in order to start a transition, or they never, uh, already started the process of careers because they were too dependent in terms of where they were. And I think everybody should have a side hustle.
That's true. I've heard it from somebody else too. Like, this is such a profound point. And what you mentioned around, when you mentioned around the resignation letter, that reminded me of a Will Smith analogy when he talked about jumping out of the airplane. He said, once you're ready to jump, they count on 3 and they push you on 2 because people grab on and 3.
Yeah. I actually jumped out of a plane before. It's pretty cool. It's a surreal experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 2021. Hopefully we'll do more of that.
Yeah, seriously.
Ram, any final messages to an audience? Anything I have not asked you wish I did? Anything you'd like an audience to walk away with? Folks who are right now building their businesses, maybe they're thinking about building their businesses, maybe they're thinking about hiring an agency, or not even hiring, but just considering product help.
I think really reflect. So like on the project side, right? It's the end of the year. A lot of people are trying to think and plan out what they want to do next year, whether it's a marketing website, whether it's a new product. Really think about why you want to do it. What's your goal? What success is going to look like for you? Trying to quantify it a bit and try to put some metrics around it, and really understand what, who you're going to be targeting to, what's in it for them. How can you test the idea early on, very low effort? How can you reach those people effectively? How can you touch your customers in a way that is affordable and potentially scalable in the future? And focus more on your customers in terms of what they want and need as well. Spend the time, spend the effort and energy reaching out to them and talking to them. And when you do it, ask the questions and then just shut up and listen, because they'll just probably give you a novel in terms of things that they want or they need, or their challenges which they have. Yeah, I think listening is important to everybody. Don't be big-headed or whatever. Don't put yourself up on a pedestal, even though you might be a senior person somewhere. Go and speak. If you're at a large organization, go and speak to your junior, lower entry kind of people in your organization, the ones that are probably speaking to your customers. Understand what they're going through, understand what their customers are telling them, and listen. And that goes all the way to everywhere, to a CEO of a startup of 5 people. Just do more listening and less actioning before you really know what you're doing and why.
Ram, it was a pleasure. That was so cool. Great to switch roles, or actually, I'd rather say jump into being a host and have you being a subject.
Yeah, no problem. It was cool. It allowed me to kind of like really get it all out there, because I've had a long thought process in terms of all the things over the last year I want to say. So I'm happy I got it out.
Totally. And for you guys, this was an off episode of Off the Record show with Aram, and I'm just the guest host. And great to have Aram and have this conversation. Hopefully, it's helpful for you, for the founders, of folks who are trying to build something and do really cool work in 2021.
Cool, awesome. Well, it's great having you as a guest host, Sergey. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, for agreeing to do this. That was fun.